What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to talk a little bit more about Ratchet and Clank because I've been following a lot of the conversation online, and it appears to me that this game, once its PC requirements eventually get released, is going to be contentious. The last few months, or I would say the last 8 to 9 months, has seen people on all sides of the conversation in the console community constantly bicker back and forth about performance and so on and so forth. I know you might say, well, PC players also have their bickering, but that's been going on for many, many years. I think the console community just got to see this 60 FPS thing, and so far it appears that every game now must be scrutinized under the eyes of this extreme performance. And now, even still, because of the almost zealotry that's going in here, now that the PlayStation 5's exclusive called Ratchet Clank Rift Apart is coming to PC, a lot of people are wondering if some of the statements that were made by the people involved with this game are actually going to hold up. Now, these statements are kind of really vague if you actually go back and look through to see what was exactly said, but it appears that Sony's developers, or whoever the executive was, I don't know, but this is the rumor I've been hearing online, mentioned something about the PlayStation 5's SSD being capable to run Ratchet & Clank compared to the PS4. Now, there's been conversation that the PS4, this is from Digital Foundry, by the way, is probably not capable of running it because of certain limitations. And this is what Digital Foundry basically cites this. They have their video timestamp for you, and you can go ahead and you can watch that video and kind of gain a little bit of a background as to the, hardware limitations. But what I think is going on right now is when you think about, say, once this game is released on PC, is this really going to deter a lot of PC players from actually playing the game? Now, that's a very interesting question, but let's look at some data, let's look at some hardware, and we'll see where things are going. Now, Richard Ledbetter titled his article from the Digital Foundry Weekly, it says, "Why Ratchet & Clank is crucially important for the future of PC gaming." He says, how can a game based on proprietary PS5 tech work across a range of PC hardware? Now, the question to me is actually quite interesting because, number one, he's coming to it with a perspective of something along the lines of, say, this paragraph here, where he says this. He says, if that sounds somewhat hyperbolic, this is basically an audience to, in reference to the PC community and so on and so forth, talking about this game. The new consoles have much in common with PC. They're based in x86 processors, they use Radeon graphics, and they have SSDs. They've been staple components of mainstream gaming PCs for many, many years. Basically, that's what this has been going on. So he's saying that these things that the PlayStation 5 have, we've had them on PC for many years. I've said this before in many videos, but, for the most part, it seems like you're talking nonsense when people don't necessarily want to look at the hardware. And he says, however, Ratchet & Clank leans in heavily to proprietary PS5 components, and their equivalents in the PC space have yet to be established, nor have they been battle-tested in a AAA release. Ratchet & Clank looks set to change that. Now, he is not entirely, in my opinion, accurate with this statement. Now, I put a caveat there because there is a YouTuber who has taken the time to painstakingly compare the closest hardware of the PlayStation 5 to what it will look like on PC. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to a YouTuber named Iceberg Tech. This YouTuber went ahead to kind of find the closest GPU to what is in the PS5, and it happened to be an RDNA 2 GPU called the RX 6700 non-XT. There is a 6700 XT. It is actually a very solid GPU, but the 6700 non-XT had some capabilities and some of its memory bandwidth and clock speeds that were similar to what the PlayStation 5 GPU had. So he went ahead and kind of took these particular concepts and was able to create a build that seemed to be able to almost mimic or match what the PlayStation 5 has. Now, the GPU clock speeds, if you look very carefully and if you look at the memory size and stuff, there are differences. But if you actually go ahead and kind of check out his video, he explains why you're going to see some clock speeds that kind of differ overall. But what he does with his video is very, very, in my opinion, smart, because he takes these components and he uses a methodology to start to, showcase different games and how they perform on a PC where you build, something that kind of is, similar. And he was able to get some really good results with a variety of games, especially the PlayStation exclusives, where, he was able to kind of see exactly where some of the limitations were and so on and so forth. Also comparing a few things like how it's achieved on the PlayStation 5 and how they optimized it, and using some of Digital Foundry settings. So yes, even though even though Richard Ledbetter say it's yet to be established, I think the reason I said he's not really accurate is because it cannot be established because the hardware has its differences, but we do have close similarities that we can use to simulate what we think might be going on. So, in my opinion, this Digital Foundry article, and I understand, I'm giving a little grace here. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying I know he's probably tried and everybody's looked around, but seeing the differences, you really have to kind of figure out where you're going to go, because if you go to the 6700 XT, that graphics card is going to blow the PS5's GPU out of the water. So you kind of have to stay a little bit under in some extent and just go from there. But you can actually run higher clock speeds if you get a good model of that GPU that has a higher clock speed capability in a sense. But here's a problem with the 6700 non-XT. It's actually not readily available in many regions. So that's another challenge. So I guess that's something that you have to basically take into account. But when this game eventually releases, and I know this is a whole bunch of tech talk, a lot of people are really going to test this game and scrutinize this game. Because one thing that you might necessarily, not pay very close attention to right now is if you look at the Steam hardware survey from, as of May 2023, you notice that right now the hardware, component popularity is starting to actually change heavily. Now, before, when we were looking at, say, things like RAM and so on and so forth, it appears that people had already been using about 16 gigs of RAM for a while. Their processors, 20% of them were using somewhere around 2.3 to 2.6 gigahertz. So these are somewhat older processors. But the more popular physical CPUs are like the 6-core CPUs, which means that about 33% of people using these. And then, maybe if you kind of do a range, you can say maybe some people are using much more powerful CPUs or much less. And in terms of video cards, 8 gigabytes of VRAM seems to be very common. So anything from the GTX 1070, maybe the GTX 1080, and other GPUs like the 980 and all the, GTX 980, and then even some RX 4 series and 5 series seem to make up the most of this. And then primary resolution seems to be anywhere from 1080 to 4K with a very, very good amount of folk that are using this stuff. So a lot of the PCs that you're seeing here are capable of running even some of the more tasking games. These PCs and these specs can run Cyberpunk at decent FPS. So I don't necessarily see how Ratchet & Clank is going to have too much of a problem, because the machinery on PC has always been, in a sense, much more advanced, than what the PS4 and the Xbox, One had back in the day. It's not till just this generation that they started to actually implement a few of these things. So the conversation is on and all eyes are on this game. And for the most part, you're going to see this game get stress tested on the PC side. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to run very fine on PC. Because one thing a lot of people haven't necessarily considered is on PC, you actually get a lot more options to be able to kind of balance your performance based on what you select and what you choose. If you notice, like even in this video here, an ad might play where he does The Last of Us. There's one he does for The Last of Us and some others. Like God of War here. He basically goes in. Yeah, I told you an ad might play. He basically goes in and he kind of balances some of the settings to kind of attain, some close performance, and just to be able to see what the PS5 is able to do here. Performance is getting you 60 FPS at a PS5, or targeting 60 FPS, and quality is also giving you about 30 FPS. So you could choose anyone you wanted in a PS5. Well, when you went ahead to just basically use a PC version, PC doesn't necessarily have, too many different options. It just basically gives you a frame limit, and it gives you, different selections sections of high, medium, low, and ultra, something like that. I can't remember exactly the options that you get, but you don't seem to get too many options. But once he went ahead and kind of balanced it out, he was able to use the high settings in God of War, the 2018 version, and was able to pretty much run anywhere from, about 60 FPS on average to be able to get very good performance on the game. So you're already seeing that this machinery is probably what people are probably going to be using to test out this Ratchet and Clank game when it comes out. And if it's already running the God of War game, I don't necessarily think that other hardware on the PC side, especially now, will not be able to run this game. But anyways, I just wanted to go ahead and talk about this a little bit because I felt like, this conversation is one thing that a lot of people will probably, have a better understanding on how PC hardware works once this game comes out. And it'll be really interesting to see the conclusions that are drawn across the internet. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys so much. And we'll talk pretty soon in another one, hopefully. Peace out.